Good day, everyone. My name is Kristen Diwan. I'm with the Arab Gulf States Institute, and today we're really delighted to be bringing to you this panel looking at how emerging Gulf artists are pushing creative and cultural boundaries through their artistic practices. And we're especially thrilled today to be working in collaboration with the Khaleeji Art Museum. This is a burgeoning art institution founded and led by Gulf youth. In fact, it was founded just in May 2020 by the sisters Sharifa and Manar Alhinai. And we're thrilled to have Manar with us today, who's going to be guiding our discussion. Good morning, or good day, Manar.
Good morning.
I want to tell you just a little bit about the Khaleeji Art Museum. It's the first digital museum dedicated to showcasing and promoting artists from the Arab Gulf region. And if you go to the museum site, and I encourage you to do so, and we can post the site in the Q&A or in the chat section, you will see artwork that's hosted in static galleries, but you'll also see art that's hosted at immersive virtual galleries that allow visitors to scroll through these virtual rooms and to view the art in that way. And of course, the Khaleeji Art Museum also organizes exhibitions in various public locales. For instance, they have had one collaboration with the Dubai Festival City to exhibit art by Khaleeji artists in publicly accessible platforms. And that includes really large scale art projections on Dubai Festival City buildings. Their latest collaboration, which is quite an interesting, exciting one, is with Emirates Airline called the Museum in the Sky. And this is a partnership that enables flyers, and I urge all of you next time that you fly Emirates, to learn about Emirati and UAE-based artists like Najum Al-Ghanem and Maytha Abdullah. Through interviews and artist-led, the artists themselves will walk you through their own work right there on the airline's in-flight entertainment system. And since they launched basically just over 2 years ago, the Khaleeji Art Museum has organized now over 20 exhibitions, exhibit over 65 artists, and received more than 300,000 visitors and views to its various shows. Today, this collaboration with the Khaleeji Art Museum is going to be featuring 3 prominent Gulf artists, some well-established and some just emerging, who work across various mediums and explore issues of culture, gender, identity. And I must say it is really an interesting, very exciting time to be an artist in the Gulf or to be an aficionado of art in the Gulf, those of us who just get to enjoy it. As we know, several of the Gulf countries, whether you're talking about the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, are investing much more deeply in their creative economies and into cultural development, such as Abu Dhabi Cultural District. Saudi Arabia is now Diriyah, new district that they have just north of Riyadh. And of course, world famous exhibitions as well, such as the Desert X that took place in Al Ula, and more established biennales, such as the one in Sharjah and also in Jeddah. And so we're really happy today, just to bring the artists to you directly and to hear from the artists themselves. And I'll just do a brief introduction. I know that Manar is going to be guiding these longer conversations, but just to let you know who we have with us today, our first panelist is a Kuwaiti visual artist, Maha Alasaker. She's most well known for her project Women of Kuwait, which is a series and a book that sought to document the lives of Kuwaiti women in their private, intimate bedroom spaces. Maha's book was acquired by the Getty Research Institute and the Thomas J. Watson Library at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And she's also, of course, on display at the Khaleeji Art Museum. So I urge you all to take a look at that and really look at this really interesting anthropological and artistic exploration. The second panelist is Emirati artist, multidisciplinary artist, Hessa Suwaidi. She's a recent graduate. Is that correct? You've graduated now? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Parsons School of Design up in New York. And her work really combines traditional methods of craft techniques with contemporary design and photography. A really exciting project that I was just looking at, and Hessa collaborated with Bentley Motors in Dubai to create an installation during Dubai Design Week. And I really urge you to take a look at that, look it up and see what she did with these, with these Bentley cars. Our last panelist is Omani conceptual photographer Mahmood Zadjali, right?
You got it right.
Zadjali. He's a young artist who's bold and colorful photography, really captures some of the societal constraints and challenges facing Gulf youth today. And his work has been shown in the Stahl Gallery in Muscat and Manar Alhinai in Abu Dhabi. And also you can find him at the Khaleeji Art Museum. So I'm going to then pass, I guess, the virtual mic over to Manar. And as I mentioned, she is the co-founder and museum director at the Khaleeji Art Museum. She's also co-founder and co-editor of Alasaker, which is an independent magazine and platform that I'm sure a lot of you are interested in art and culture, that you've already familiar with that. And it really highlights these kind of multidisciplinary cultural creations from around the Arab Gulf. Manar is quite established and recognized in her own right. She's a recipient of the Arab Women Awards in 2011 and in 2020, two different decades. And she's also written a piece, I urge you to take a look on our own website, AGSIW Millennial Gulf Blog, which is a blog, be great for you guys to take a look at that as well. We often feature a number of artists there, as well as other youth-led initiatives in the economy and in politics. And this article that she wrote takes a look at the younger generation of Omani artists specifically, and then drawing attention, how they're actually drawing much more attention to Oman's burgeoning art scene. So with that, I'm delighted really to invite Manar to take over and just to start this conversation with our artists. And again, thank the three of you for joining us. And please, as participants, I welcome you to engage and to go ahead and be thinking about your questions, and you can add them in the Q&A, and we will leave some time, of course, for your engagement once we've had this conversation. So Manar.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for a lovely introduction. On behalf of everyone at the Khaleeji Art Museum, it's a pleasure to be here and to be discussing an important topic with 3 stars from the region who I had the honor of working with on various projects. So without further ado, let's kickstart this discussion by going back to the beginning of your art journeys. Let's go back to discuss, did you see yourself for your art today? Did you always know the messages that your art would tackle, or was it something you discovered along the way? Maha, let's start with you. I'm sure our audience would find it interesting to hear how your career has shifted from engineering to investments to starting important societal discussions through your art.
Thank you for having me here. So I feel like if I want to talk about my journey, it wasn't like a linear journey, or it wasn't something that I know what I want to do. It's more about struggling and just understanding that I'm different than my family, and the way how I see life is different. But through social norms, I knew earlier, like at the age maybe at 6 or 5, that to stop questioning the elder. They will never give me a good answer for my questions. And I just started to be just, focusing on drawing. Like I was always like into art since younger. And then I think I threw myself in school because I thought that would give me independency just to graduate. Art came very later in my life. And so I did so many things. I did investment. I self-taught myself to photography until I did MBA. So I decided to leave my country in 2013 to find myself. And through that, I joined, I wanted to learn more about photography. So I joined ICP, International Center of Photography. And during the graduation, you need to do a project. It was very painful. It was very hard. It was the toughest school. Like I did engineering, I did investment, I did MBA. They're more easy read the book, understand the concept, and apply. But when you go to art, it's more about going inward and going to these places that you learn through life how to hide it, not talk about it, just maneuver around it. And I was struggling with the project because it was very personal. My project called Undisclosed. And I remember like at the end of the year, they do kind of portfolio review. And through that, there was one gallerist, like New York gallerist, like saw my work and she started looking at me. And then we had a conversation and she was like really moved about the work and she wanted to represent me. So I came there as a student. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to expect from New York City. Especially it's a city where people go there and they was like, you know, I would just reach the moon, and I wanted to reach the moon. But at the same time, I knew it's very competitive. So when I had my first time to show my work outside Kuwait, it was at the art fair in the Hampton. And it was this work, Undisclosed. And standing there, looking at the work, like we rent a car and went with my friend there. It's like, okay, this is who I am. I'm supposed to do this. This has felt so normal. I also felt like naked, like standing naked in front of all these people, seeing the work there. I was like very self-conscious and a very outgoing person. And through that work, I knew what I wanted. And then I went to the new journey of what does it mean to be an artist, how to develop your work. It's not about getting one good work, that's it. It's very dangerous if your first work got a representation, because then what is next? So yeah, since then I found my voice, and I don't want to be silent, and no one can silence me, I think.
No, that's great. And I'm glad that you're not silent. Hessa, like Maha, you also saw a shift from design to conceptual art. If you could tell us more about that and how that shift happened.
Honestly, thinking back, when we had these conversations when we were meeting and everything, thinking back, I actually started as a visual artist in school. So thinking conceptually was there initially, and I feel like I just scratched the surface, and my IB art artworks that I've did the series are all paintings, and they all had to do with beauty and cultures. So it was always kind of vividly there, but I didn't ever see it why is it that me as a person can speak about these things? Because it was very outwards. I didn't look in at the time. So then I went into design, and I did textiles design, specifically in print. And in my graduate collection, there was these a lot of my concepts was to do with creating prints out of lights. Like if you see on the shared screen here, I really wanted to have these bold, bright lights and these colors. And thinking conceptually about this, it was all wanting to shine and wanting to be seen, because I didn't feel like I was seen or heard. Like Maha, growing up, I was silenced from a very young age whenever I asked a question, because I was a very curious child growing up. So there were hints of me in there wanting to explore these topics, but I didn't feel like I had the courage. I didn't feel like I had the braveness to. And I also didn't feel like I knew the right way of doing it without feeling the pressure and kind of being scared of the backlash I might receive. And I didn't understand the way to do the right thing and the way to really express myself through art and not through words. So yeah, transitioning and coming in to do my master's degree, that's when I really dug deep, and they put us in situations where we were extremely vulnerable. A lot of the prompts that we got in our first semester was very looking into our emotions, looking into our memories. And I feel like that was a very, very big trigger for me, because I used to always journal growing up. I used to always put my feelings in a book, close it, and move on. I didn't really, it was very passive. I didn't really look into it. I didn't really heal from it. So doing my master's program was honestly a huge healing journey for me. And I started understanding who I am as a person and my identity, and looking inwards, and understanding what is important to me throughout my work and what I wanted to say. So my thesis project, actually, Kisheti, talks about my hair, which means my poofy hair in Arabic, and specifically to the Gulf dialect, because there was a moment in my life where I had to understand, okay, I'm not a girl anymore, I'm a woman. And it's a very like sharp turn. It's like, okay, I had to think about all these different things that like I didn't have to gradually transition into. I had to just stop. And why did that really bother me? So it was all to do with my identity and feeling like I was told what I was, even though I strongly knew who I was. And I didn't feel like I can flourish being who I was until I started exploring these concepts. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and you will be seeing more of Hessa's work as the conversation goes on. Mahmood, I had the pleasure of witnessing your art journey evolve over the past 5 years, and you come from a background of filmmaking, which gives you an interesting perspective on matters. Tell us about that turning point for you when it came to your art journey. And I know we've discussed it before, that point that really made all the difference in your art journey so far.
Yeah, I would say, just like any creative, I've really struggled in the beginning to find my own voice, because just like any creative, you would have so many sources of inspiration. You would think to yourself, wow, I could never be as good as, my mentors or the people that I follow on social platforms, for example. So very early on, when I started my journey, I would say I was trying my best to almost mimic other people's work in order for me to kind of find my own voice. But I think my biggest turning point was definitely when I had a small conversation with one of my friends who was visiting from Europe at the time. And we were talking about freedom of speech, and often that topic in particular is, veiled with, this perfect society that everybody's trying to pretend that we're living in. So throughout that process, it just clicked in my head that, oh, what if we turn that into a particular photo shoot? And I believe if my photos would be shared right now, this was like the outcome of that particular conversation, because then we realized that, okay, freedom could be something beautiful, but hardly anybody really enjoys it, because we're always either muffled or covered to really see the freedom that we always seek to find. And often that cover is something beautiful or something as colorful as the color yellow, as you see in the photo. And after I've posted these photos, I really felt like a lot of people associated with the same concept, associated with the conversation that I was trying to start with this particular series. And then that's when I realized that, I don't necessarily need to mimic anybody. Even my own thoughts and ideas are good enough, and I could start sharing them. All I have to do is just find the best representation for those ideas. And often at times I found that what works for me and for my own, voice is just voicing out my personal issues that I face, things that I deal with on a day in, day out, basically. And often at times it was very surprising for me to see that people relate with the same issues that I might be having as well. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, okay, I didn't see that one coming. So in the process, I feel like the more I dive into that ideology, the more concepts came out, the more projects started to evolve, and they became more and more personal. And I feel like I've gotten to a stage in my career or in my artist journey in which I'm very confident about my self-image and the work that I represent, versus 5 years ago, where I was very tamed and I was a bit slightly shy to share a lot of my work, because I was always concerned that people will not relate. I was always concerned that people might not agree, but that's our job as artists. People don't necessarily have to agree with us. People, it's nice to hear their voices and hear their perspective, but at the end of the day, we're sharing our work to the world for the world to kind of digest it in their own subjective way. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. So as artists as artists who are from and based in the region, you've witnessed how the scene has evolved in the past few years. You know, we have the establishment of international and local art institutions and initiatives. But do you believe that art truly has an impact on Khaliji art, culture and society? Sorry, Khaliji culture and society, in the sense that can it really create or influence change? Hessa, in your case, I know that social media had played a pivotal role in starting dialogues, and you had women responding to your work and relating to it.
Yeah, personally for me, social media has been a huge impact for my work. It's been my kind of source of research, primary research. So I do talk to my community. I do get ideas through my community by talking about shame culture and talking about things that we've experienced in our society, in our culture. It's more about the pressures of being a woman. I did feel like there's a movement going on, especially with Shahid Nazar and Sara Bahbah. They were one of my, I feel like they really triggered like my thoughts. And it's what really led me to also, because being far away and being in New York City, I still wanted to have the ties to my culture and ties to an audience back home, especially post-pandemic with us having, you know, being digital. It's how do you translate textiles from something that's so traditional and so touched that you have to, it's tactile, you have to touch it, you have to experience and have the full experience of it. How do you translate that to the audience back home or the audience worldwide, sorry. And then that's when I felt like my multidisciplinary artist instinct came in, and that's how I merged textile and photography together. Because if you think about it, it's like the hijab is a piece of cloth, everything is a piece of cloth, everything that is made up in the whole world is a piece of cloth. So textile as a tool is very, very powerful. But how do we translate something that's so traditional like that into something that's very widespread? And that's when I found my love through creating conceptual concepts with my textiles through photography. A lot of my work represents me, and I am the subject of a lot of my work. So Kasheti, for example, like I spoke about before, this is a tapestry that I made of hands. So I was learning how to spin yarn, and extremely traditional. I had a wool roving, and I wanted to spin yarn so it mimics the unpredictability of my hair. So a lot of the colors were very bold, pink, orange, extremely, it's basically what I call it, the Barbie pink. So this idea of being the most perfect woman in that Barbie pink. So a lot of my work does have that feminine colors and aspects. So Kasheti came from a place where I wanted to own up to my hair and my identity and what I felt like represented me without having these ideas of culture and society really impact me. It was a long journey. I did have a lot of nervous breakdowns, a lot of tears, because I did feel like I was learning to be extremely vulnerable, and putting yourself out there is very hard, but looking inward and releasing these emotions onto my work is what really gave me strength and healing, I feel. So the tapestry that I created had these condensed forms and these open forms that I created with triangles, and that mimicked this idea of having this constant battle of like concealing my thoughts, concealing myself, but also like being loud and being outspoken and being seen and being heard. And then another, sorry, I'm just gonna go in. I'm sorry if I'm going like overtime right now, but just this one little aspect as well. The Ghatha tree back home is a huge symbol, Emirati symbol. So I did take my work outside and had this conversation with the Ghatha tree. And relative to me, because it is a desert plant and it does withstand all this harsh environments and the heat. It still stands strong and it still blooms. And that's what I was trying to emphasize in this image here on the left. With cultural, social, and social pressures, I will always stand with myself. So I wanted to have this link to my Emirati culture, that just because I'm the way I am does not mean I'm not proud of where I'm from and what made me Emirati, because we are very, very strong women, and we are very, I don't know what the word is for it, but we have this fire in us, and I really want that to be seen in my work.
And this series of yours has got to be one of my favorites so far. I really love it. It's so strong. It's bold. It doesn't need a lot of explanation. Mahmood, you, like many of us from this generation, we grew up at a time where TV had a huge influence in shaping our thoughts and introducing us to even or helping bridge cultures. And you, as a filmmaker, who also explores issues that are important to him and to those around him, do you believe that art can create change, or does create change in your home country, in Oman?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think art in so many ways is the main driver for change. I mean, it opens the door for conversation, and that's the only way you can start changes, to be talking about something and then deciding whether change is necessary or not. And I've always felt like art has a special place within society, because obviously we get the opportunity to go to museums and explore art, and then often at times art, especially from our region, talks about very personal subjects to us and to our generation, even the generations before us as well. So I think art could potentially be used as a strong tool to open the door for people to talk about something. But then it could be even pushed one step further, where it could be the start of change. So for example, at some point when I was exhibiting at Style Gallery, I had a project called Moral Assessment, in which I was exploring the idea of what if one day people who necessarily I'm just trying to think of the right word. People who on social media have opinions over us when they don't know us, be ruling the world. They'll be creating this machine in which they would segregate the society into people who would be accepted in society and people who will not be accepted in society. And I think when people started to experiment with my installation and actually try it out, and I've designed the installation in order to have it make people get rejected out of society nine times out of 10, in order for them to kind of have this awe feeling about, oh, okay, so this is how it feels. And I think in a lot of ways, this is how art could be contributing into shaping society into something better, and often at times something even not so good. So I think, yeah, it's absolutely a big driver into shaping generations, and also allowing generations to flourish and grow as well. Just like you said, TV, I remember the early 2000s when I used to watch certain shows that brought me up to be who I am right now. And I think it's up to us, the artists, to really harness art in order to do the same, but in a good way, obviously, and not be the bad guys, I guess.
Thank you for that. These are really interesting points. Maha, you currently have an exhibition running in Kuwait. Congratulations again, titled My Name is Woman. And, you know, in addition to that, you have also displayed your work internationally, and you have, you know, catered to different audiences, and you interacted with different audiences. Now, having that diverse experience of also, you know, living abroad and living in Kuwait and the region, do you believe that art has impact on Khaleeji society? Can it start dialogues?
Okay, that's a tough question. I feel like, yes, art will make impact, but it's also, when you create art directed to Khaleeji societies, you need to think like 2-3 times ahead of your times, because there is a way of making art, and there is a way of making art that you want your viewer see it. My work, it's more provocative, but I also needed to think about the way to communicate with them. So in my thought process, it's always, I think twice. So I think as what I want to talk about, and then I think about the sensors that I have, and I think of them as a challenging to produce work. Yes, art make changes. It's the way how you use your voice. Like if you are a writer, you would write. And if you are an artist, then you use your art. So for example, this piece is from my work, is called The Forbidden Bodies. And this is like an embroidery piece written by me, reflecting on the way how my society see the woman. So they see it as an object, and it's like as sexual objects. This piece, if you can hold on that now. So this piece, I did it in 2019 while I was in the States. So making art away from my society has more, personally for me, it's more way to breathe, where since I came back, I moved to Kuwait 2019, I'm struggling a bit because I feel like the sensors is not only in my head, it's around me. So I'm trying to figure out a way to create my safe space. Where do I have my studio, where I have like artists who I feel comfortable with, and trying to create this community here. So that piece I made in 2019 in response to a series of images that I did talking about the female body. Because like when I saw these works, I was like really angry and I didn't know why I'm angry. So I started to respond to them. And then I took all these words and put them there. So I made it not knowing why and how. I just knew that I want to sit with these words. And in my process with the embroidery piece, I like to take it with me outdoor. So it's kind of a performance. So I used to do that piece in the train, in restaurants, in flight, and people come and talk to me the more, because like people are not used to see a young woman holding needles, and it's also a conversation. I used the same piece also in a protest happening in Kuwait for women's rights. And of course I will take my dog because I have high anxiety, and I was really scared of having these out in public because this is a public space. So I could be arrested because of some of the words that I had. If you notice this work, I had some censored. So I censored some of the words to take control over who do the censorship. And the same piece landed if you go back to that image, it's landed also in the gallery. But in this, it's a bit changed because in the show, I wanted to create like a tapestry to remind people about the words that we say to each other inside the house. So art could be in different places. I use this work in social media. I used it in outside protesting, and I also used it in a gallery space. The one before that is another way. My work is really connected about talking about women. And I do remember one of my first interviews, the interviewer told me, "You are a feminist." And I was so scared. It's like, no, I'm not a feminist. I'm just a woman. I was so scared from this word because it's triggered like my mom point of view about feminism. I grew up like, although my mom is very educated, but she hated Muhammad Qasim and Nawal Saadawi, which is like people I look up for. But at that time, for her, she saw like in the 80s and 90s, they saw like feminism as like a really bad things and women haters. So when they talked to me and told me I am feminist, I was like, no, I'm not. And it took me a couple of months to realize, yes, I'm a feminist, and being a feminist, it's not a bad thing. And if my mom thinks that being a feminist is, and being loud, that's something she doesn't like, it's her opinion, it's not mine. So in this next one, I'm jumping between things, kind of not a linear brain, so my thoughts goes everywhere. That one is also one of the work I did while I was in New York City. It was during the Me movement. I was part of the Resistance as Female, where we put an ad for people, bring some arts and take over the ads in New York City. So art can make change. Art from different places can make change. So it's also the work between making it a public versus private spaces. And the work could talk and be in a different places. Like here, it's the same work translated in a different direction in the exhibition. And this is in the private space versus the public space.
Thank you for that, Maha. Art is often created, as means to share, like you said, frustrations, hopes, dreams. It's a medium to communicate our worries and our dreams for the future. For artists like Hessa, for example, that means that she had, as she said, show her vulnerability and share that publicly. Let's touch upon some of the opportunities and challenges that come with creating art, like the art that the three of you create, that is meant to raise social issues or influence change. Mahmood, from our discussion, you stated that your biggest challenge has been to over-explain what your work actually means to people who ever come and come close and start experiencing your work. Can you tell us more about that and the opportunities that have risen for you since you've embarked on your art journey?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest struggles is trying to overthink how I would simplify my concepts for the viewer or the recipient. Often at times, because I'm a photographer, people always say a photo could be speaking a thousand words, but I've really struggled to convey my messages through my photography, because unless it's accompanied with a big paragraph where I really dive into the concept and my thought process, often at times it just flies over people's head. And this is a great example of that. So when I did, I participated in an exhibit and also this particular series, Belushi, was basically my tribute into my tribe. I come from a tribe called Belushis, and our tribe is extremely vivid in regards of our culture. We have our own language, our own folklore music, and also our own dresses, especially for the females. And I really wanted to express all of those things in the best way or in the best medium possible. And considering that I'm a photographer, after one single conversation that I had with my mom while she was literally doing an embroidery on one of the dresses that's actually on the one on the left and the yellow one, I figured that, these outfits are the best representation of my tribe. And I've added my own touch into it. As you can see, the bright colors with the photography that I've done, and also having the female models have sunglasses and wear sneakers, as all part of me and part of the youthful me. So in the process of creating this artwork and displaying it, a lot of people struggle to understand what does it represent, what does it mean, and they go like, oh yeah, okay, it's a bunch of cool photos with women wearing Belushi dresses, but what does it really represent? And it was more of a celebration for me, and I think you need to accept the fact that not everybody is going to understand your artwork, no matter how much you try to explain it and display it for people in the best or easiest way possible. There's always going to be a group of people who necessarily don't comprehend what you're trying to convey. And I've come into terms with that, although I very much struggle with it, because my sole passion has always to tell a story, especially through my work in filmmaking. And I really struggle internally whenever somebody approaches me with very obvious questions about my artwork. And I try my best to really emphasize on what I was trying to convey. But I think that is a challenge I am yet to overcome. I think there's going to be a lot of incidents where people will still come and approach me and ask me very obvious questions about my artwork, and that's okay. It's a part of our journey to develop as artists. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Mahmood. Like you said, I think it's the part of the journey of everybody. Even us, when we curate exhibitions, we always get, like you said, questions that we may think are obvious, but people have different perspectives of matters, and they may not necessarily share our views, or maybe not understand it as easily or as quickly as we may think they do, and that's fine. It's all enjoyable and part of the process. Maha, you touched upon this a bit earlier, but I know that for the specific exhibition that you have in Kuwait right now, for the different for the work that you are representing, you had to change or curate it specifically for the audience. And I know that you said you had to go through different challenges just to make sure that you are conveying your message, and at the same time you are putting it within the respect of the culture and society that you live in.
Yeah, so my exhibition, My Name is Woman, is, I think it was like my first exhibition where I exhibited my work from 2013 to 2022 all together. So my subject matter is usually it's what does it mean to be a woman? Coming from cultured religion place, and through that I tap into different topics. Having exhibition in my own country was the hardest one, because as I said, about the censoring and about me letting go of my agenda and just bringing people. So my goal in having an exhibition is I want my people to go in and leave with questions. So and I also didn't want the exhibition to be only photos. So my work is evolved also in natural dye, textile, embroidery. And the way how, like in this exhibition, I worked with curator Muhammad Qasim, and he helped me to transform the whole thing. So in the way how we curate everything, we kept all the images and all the textile pieces about the female body, the anatomy hidden inside. So if you are outside, you will see certain work, and then you go through them. We created a conversation between the works and each other, that how this work speaks to the other one. And at the end, we had it like an installation, which is like at the end of the exhibition, there is a small door, and then you go to this installation. If we can just pause on that. So that one, it talks more about the domestic space. And I curated here, there is like 5 placements, like the traditional one. Women back then in 40, it's always women are associated to, housekeeping, decorating the house. Like even when they start to be an artist, no one took them seriously. It was like, oh yeah, your craft, and there's this line about it. So in this work, I took this object where women's supposed to do, and then I wrote the saying that's usually being said from a grandma to her daughter or to her granddaughters, like saying that control the woman. So what's happening is even within our domestic place, the women try to reduce the freedom of another woman and tell her where is her boundaries. Kind of the men have these boundaries, and the role of the mother or the grandmother is to obey and deliver the message to the daughter. Like I remember since I was young that my brother, who's just like two years younger than me, has more privileges than me. There's certain things I cannot do just because I am a girl, and at a certain age he had more stuff like about going out with his friend, coming back home, and small little things, but that's also changed the dynamic. So in these installations I curated like a table where there was a dinner and there was people there and they left. And, it's time where you pick up everything, but the words are there. I wanted to remind people about the things that they say within their domestic places that affect future generation and young girls. And in curating all the exhibition, and in a way that I curated it in a way that I was censoring myself, which images I will put, how can I talk about the body without showing a naked photo? So I also used the fruits and the representation. I used like silk, pinkish materials to create tensions. It's harder to do that, but in the same time, I feel, at least in my way, my message is to talk to people and to grab their attention to things that they are used to, that they don't question anymore. They just follow without questioning if that is beneficiary or not.
Thank you, Maha. The exhibition runs until when? What date exactly for people who'd like to visit in Kuwait?
The exhibition is extended now until Eid, I think July 10 or 12, something like that.
Okay, so there's still a month to go.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for that. Hessa, I know that one of your biggest challenges was expressing your identity and your thoughts through your work and actually expose your vulnerability to the world and sharing it and putting it out there. But also that's where the opportunity has lied for you, right? Could you please tell us more about that?
I think, like I said before, with everything that's happened, like looking inwards has been very, very empowering for me because, like I said before, all the work that I put out there before has always been like, okay, I see something and I want to talk about it. But what gives me the right to talk about it? So I have to look inwards, like, why does this trigger me? And then putting it out there and having this fear of like, what are people going to say is a big weight on my shoulder. I'm sure Maha also touched upon that. It's been an extremely huge opportunity for me, especially because I am in my work. So it does show my side and my vulnerability and everything coming from within. But it also, with the responses of people's idea of my work, just putting it out there and then hearing people's responses, not specifically from the Khaleeji culture, people from all over the world, and that they also do link with my work, even if they don't even read Arabic, because there was kasheti everywhere, all over that installation. They really did feel like they connected with the work. And that for me showed me this opportunity of the work that I did create for this installation did speak to a lot of people and did speak to a lot of opportunities, not specifically just to the Khaleeji culture. It's the colors, it celebrates so many different cultures like Latin America, India. And I really wanted to emphasize that it is a global issue. It's not just us in the Khalij. Talking about hair. Hair is a big topic in so many different cultures and so many different societies. And I really wanted to explore that even further now with getting these responses from people. And I feel like opening the doors to these conversations is where I find my opportunity, creating work and having conversation, whether it's through social media or through amazing talks like this we're having today. Does really embark a huge change in our art scene and a huge change in our culture. Not change in our culture, but bringing more awareness to our culture and what we're doing. Like Maha said, words are very strong. So I do use a lot of text in my work as well. And I feel like that's kind of where the opportunities lie. It's through the work and making it, looking inward and being vulnerable and putting yourself out there is what really helps you create these connections with people. So yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. many artists in the region have risen to popularity without really having been exhibited in any institution or through any exhibition. And social media has really helped them in reaching a wider audience. Now, all of you have both exhibited your work on social media and on the ground. And I'm interested to know, how do these mediums differ to all of you? What is more powerful in this day and age, specifically when it comes to the Gulf region and the Gulf audience? Maha, you use different mediums to express your work. You display it on your website. Some of the works displayed on your website. Others is on social media, and some, as you have right now, is currently displayed in an exhibition in Kuwait. Now, I'm interested to know what has been the most powerful medium for you, given that you've catered to different audiences, both internationally and regionally. And does it differ if the audience is Western or if it's a Khaleeji audience?
For me, I display different things in different places. So usually my fine art photography, it's mostly for gallery. I put my portfolio in my website because I feel these works needs time to look at them together and to reflect on them. Social media are very powerful and I use them, but I rarely post the images there. I might put them later on. Social media are very powerful in my case because I speak up for women and I start to talk and connect people to different things. My latest, for the last 2 years, I've been talking about the female body. So what I was doing is, there is such an amazing platform like Mauj, where it's an Arabic platform that they're trying to raise the female sexual awareness. There is a couple of these platforms that teach women about birth and stuff, because there's no, for example, there's no sexual education for us. We need to figure out by ourselves, and the internet is just the worst things. And the basic things that we need is to understand and connect to our body that we move and we use every day. So Instagram was amazing in that. So I was talking a lot, posting some of my images, my embroidery through the process. People connect, a lot of people, a lot of women, especially from the Gulf. They have I have two responded. I have people who I know them, who look at my work and they pretend that it's not there. They don't discuss it with me. They don't even tell me why I'm doing that. They just pretend that it's not there because it will create a conflict, even for them to talk. And then there is the younger, the younger generations are amazing. They come and they share stories, they ask for help, they ask for guidance. So social media is an amazing place to connect, to share. I share some photography, but it's not the fine art, because I believe that there is a different audience for different things.
Totally. Hessa, the pandemic for you, I know, presented particular challenges when it came to displaying your work, because, you work a lot with fabrics and a lot of your work is experiential, right? People come and see your work and they touch it and then they engage with it. So I know that the pandemic has been challenging, yet, it provided you with a way to display your work in a creative way. If you could tell us more about that.
One of the challenges, of course, like you said, it was the pandemic. And I do like to create journeys and storytelling when I do create work, and I want people to fully be immersive and experience through it. One of my work that I posted purely just on social media was a very small prompt that I was working on. It's the picture after this, if you can go to the next slide. This was just a picture of this little video that I took, and it's about the hair braiding and how, and then you'd also see pink chains within it. And it represents this restricting and limiting that, and limits that I felt with my hair. So this little, it was a little video with, it was actually a very small box, but I wanted to create an experience where it's as if you're going into it and looking into this world of just hair and chains, specifically pink chains. And the voiceover was by Chimamanda Ngozi about we are all feminists. So this was the start of like really looking into this discussion of what it means to be a woman. So this was one of the first experiments that I had on social media, posting this video and creating this virtually through textiles. And also, like I said, Instagram was a big part of my research. And it's a big part of creating these conversations with people, because when you do work, you feel like you're alone and you feel like you're in your space. But putting polls out there and putting questions for people, one of the questions that I put out was about shame culture, and it was talking about what statements have been said to you growing up that have really stuck with you and not limited your growth, but it's kind of just haunting in the back of your head. So this was kind of where my research goes in, and hearing these responses back from people, it's very empowering to feel like I'm not alone, and to feel like this work that I'm going to create with this fuel of these words from people is really going to create an impact. So social media as a tool for research, as a tool for showing your work, is a very strong tool. And I wouldn't say that it's not as important as exhibiting, because exhibiting is a huge part of the experiential process. Like, I don't think my installation that I created would be transitioned into social media properly. So I do try to create two things simultaneously. So like one of the other photographs that I did, it was a little video of I was working with veils, and it had the background of girls just want to have fun, and it was all in pink, and it was very playful. It's just like, I would say social media is like a teaser for the work and a teaser to start the conversation, but then that leads to the bigger thing, which is like exhibiting in a physical space. Yeah.
No, it's the same for us. Social media plays a pivotal role, in the museum as well, being a digital museum. So it serves as a research, as it's a research platform, a way to connect with our audience and to keep up with what they're doing. Mahmood, the pandemic was a time for you when you saw a surge in the number of people who are following you, and you grew in popularity, and more people got to know about your work. Now, as an artist, you sell prints, you have exhibited your work in Oman and the UAE, and your social media kind of serves as a digital gallery for your audience. How does each medium differ for you as a conceptual photographer, and which one is more powerful in your opinion?
I think striking a nice balance in between social media and exhibiting in the real world is crucially important. To me, I've been blessed enough to have amazing support on social media. I mean, Instagram, for example, has been a massive tool for me to not only reach out the audience that I currently have, but also it's been a great accelerator for me and my artist journey as well, because throughout Instagram, I was able to not only exhibit my work abroad, but also have the opportunity to have open line conversations with existing artists that I very much inspired to be like, and also very much inspired to collaborate with one day. And I think that's the beauty of social media. But unfortunately, it does have its restrictions, because obviously, currently, I've always felt like not enough people take me seriously as an artist just because I only exist on a particular medium. And that's often it's social media such as Instagram and Twitter. But I think the benefit of being in a gallery or exhibiting in the real world is just having that credibility as an artist. As soon as people see your work in a gallery, immediately it gives you that stamp that you're a true artist and not just somebody who is sitting in their home and posting photos on social media. And but I think getting that balance in between is very much thin line, because often at times Instagram and Twitter are tools people use to share their everyday life. So there's not much room for artists to exist within that space. And I think that's the beauty of having museums and galleries, because it really solidifies your existence as an artist as well. And I think it's been a blessing and also a curse at the same time, because I'm very particular about what I post nowadays on my social accounts, because I always look back on my shoulder thinking, oh, what people are going to think about me, or what do people think about this particular post or this particular photo. It did present its own challenges, of course, but I think it's been a great learning curve for me to strike that balance in between the two mediums. And I think both of them are extremely important and excellent for any artist, honestly. And I don't think people should think less of the both mediums in any way. And yeah.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Moving on to our last discussion point for today. We've seen different artists in the GCC are dabbling with NFT. What role would NFTs play in regards to your art journey, if at all, especially that many of you produce photography work that can be minted? Mahmood, photographers from Oman are minting their photography work. You know, some of them are doing well. What are your thoughts on the topic? Will NFTs have a place in your art journey?
And I wanted, if I could just interrupt 1 second, I apologize. If we could kind of get your concise answers to all these, because I do want to leave a little bit of time. We're getting a lot of engagement from the audience, and I want to be sure we have some time to bring in those questions too. And I also just want to remind everyone who's here with us, you can please post your questions to the Q&A chat, and we will be getting to that very shortly. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, I'll keep it very short. I think NFTs is just a bubble, and it's a very complicated process. Although I'm a very technical person because I come from an engineering background, it just felt like it's too much of a hassle for me at this stage. Definitely, it's beneficial for a lot of artists because it could grow an audience, but NFTs are definitely its own medium, and it feels like you need to specialize in a particular style in order for you to succeed in that world, not necessarily being loose and being free and experimenting with a lot of different stuff. I would love to get into it one day. It just does not feel like it's the right time just yet for me. But yeah, I honestly think it's an amazing gateway for artists to kind of explode into the scene, especially how NFTs has grown into popularity in the recent 2 years as well.
Thank you, Mahmood. Maha and Hessa, if you could share your thoughts before we take questions from the audience.
I mean, I will keep it short. I feel like, my mediums is analog. So I do analog photography. I do textile, embroidery, natural dye. So my medium doesn't fit the NFT. I personally was curious about it. I looked at it. It's a different kind of art that it's different than mine. So looking at it, but I'm not in there.
Thank you. Hessa?
It's definitely an experimental space that I feel like I've tapped into very briefly, but not really looked into. So it's a space that I'll keep watching, but I don't think it'll benefit what I want to do and what I want to speak for.
Thank you. Thank you, dear artists, for your valuable insights.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will now pass the virtual mic back to Kristen, who will open the floor for us to answer the questions that you could type into the Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Manar, and thank you for this introduction and to be able to see the art too. I really appreciate your working it so that we can get a bit more of a sense to what artists are doing. As you said, it's important to have people explain, but also to actually artists, a lot of it is visual, so to actually see what they're doing. We have a number of questions. A lot of them have to do with identity and I would say place. So I'm going to have a series of 3 questions that are closely related. I think I'm going to direct them to each of you individually, but then you can kind of wrap them together and pick one element of them as I kind of work my way through them. If there's another element that speaks to you more, please, you can speak to that too. The first question is from Ghaith Abdullah, who I know has been working a bit in the Khaleeji art space himself. And I think I'm actually going to direct this question to you, Manar, because it's since you curate the Khaleeji Art Museum, I think it's something you must have thought about. he asked, how do you define Khaliji-ness? Is it inclusiveness of artists producing work in a Khaliji context but are not Khaliji nationals? That's one question that comes up, but I'll leave it a bit more open-ended to you too. Just when you're running the Khaleeji Art Museum, what does it mean for you to be working in that space, and how do you define Khaliji or Gulf?
So in our museum, thank you so much, Ghaith. In our museum, we display the work of both GCC nationals and the people who are living and based here. So anybody who lives in the region, we display their work as well. Yeah, in a nutshell, I don't want to take any more minutes from the rest of the artists and their questions.
Okay. So it's basically just about production or artists coming from that specific kind of geographical context then.
Yeah, so the artists who are from and based in the region, correct.
Okay. Well, let me take it then one step further. We have an anonymous attendee who asked, and maybe, Hessa, maybe I'll ask you this, given your kind of thinking about working with kind of more heritage type things and then translating it into new context. What for you really differentiates art that's produced in a Khaliji context? Like what is it? Is that a relevant kind of marker for you? It sounded like it was.
It's definitely, I wouldn't know how to do anything else. Like being Khaliji is a big part of who I am and my identity and what I deal with on a constant basis. Like if I wouldn't be able to produce any art that's not in a Khaliji context, I feel, because everything I do speak for comes from that side of me, and everything I do produce comes from that side of me. The only I don't know, Western touches that I have on my work is when I kind of use a lot of, I do use a lot of traditional techniques, especially of Khaliji craft, but bring in things like laser cutting or 3D printing or something. I would say that's like a Western addition to it. But even the colors I feel that I use is extremely Khaliji. So I don't feel like, I don't know, personally for me, if you're talking about my work, I wouldn't be able to produce any other work.
Yeah. So it just kind of innately comes from inside.
It's very natural, and sometimes it's very weird because you do something that is very natural to you. They're like, "Oh, how do you even think about that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just did it because it felt right." And I'm a very intuitive maker, so I do things that come to me very easily and very intuitively. It's never a forced situation. I don't sit and think like, "Oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this." I just let my medium speak for me. My hands speak for me. Everything is very intuitive in the way I make. And even if I did try to do it in a Western way, it will always end up very Khaliji. So it's something that's definitely, as artists, we never force a certain medium upon us. We never force a certain topic or a conversation on us. It all just happens from within. It all happens very naturally. Okay. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. I wanted to ask kind of the same question to you, Mahmood, but I'm curious. We have this question about Khaliji-ness and what it means, but especially since you had presented to us some work that, brought in the Baluchi context of your own sort of family. So I'm wondering, more generally then, does it allow you to explore what the term Khalij means, or to explore different elements, about the identity in that way?
When I explored the Baluchi identity, the only reason I've done that is because the main theme of that exhibit or the publication was, what does it mean to be Khaliji? And the reason I took that Baluchi route is because I plain out felt like I don't identify with the term Khaliji. Because again, growing up watching movies and getting to know my culture, whenever I hear the word Khaliji, I've always imagined somebody in Agal. And just to give everybody context, and Agal is a traditional attire that males wear in the Gulf. And it's very similar to countries such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and I believe Bahrain. And forgive me, don't get mad at me if I'm wrong. But in Oman, we wear what we call a kumma. So it's very different than what the rest of the Khalij usually wears. So in some areas, I just felt like I did not attach that word so much. And that's why I went that route to explore my identity as a Baluchi. But to answer you more straightforward, I think to be Khaliji is to be associated with obviously the region, but then there's other aspects to it, such as the language, the food, and the colors, and just the overall identity and the brotherhood of being Khaliji as well. And I think that impacts everybody's artwork, especially who live within the Khaliji. I almost said regime. I'm like, no, sorry, don't say that. The Khaliji region. And I think that's the biggest player into, the representation of everybody's work on this panel. I think identity plays an extreme big role, and it's not necessarily the Khaliji identity. It's just the personal aspects of our lives that we encounter every day within the context of being in the Khalij. But yeah, it's either that or just chips Oman.
Daqos bad.
Daqos, yeah, let's not forget that.
Let me ask Maha, this is a very interesting question that pushes this, I think, a bit deeper and really plays with this kind of global context that I think, well, obviously we all live in and that you both work in. And I know, Maha, you talked about this translation between the two spaces. So maybe this is a good kind of compelling question for you. This is an attendee, so thank you to the organizers and artists, so thanks to you. The work is very interesting. Oh, sorry, actually there's a question I wanted to ask, one more, excuse me. Okay, this is from Trey Hulsey, actually, not anonymous. The fact that all of you are bilingual, at least, maybe more than bilingual, indicates level of exposure to the West. And Trey asks, can you share your experience with other Gulf citizens with less exposure to the West? And we can, you can contest that if you want, or what that really means. But their experience expressing their art, are there similar themes challenging culture and tradition? Or so that's kind of just a question about how you navigate between these different spaces. And if you find even within your own communities, kind of a different kind of expression or reaction to your art. I don't know, Maha, if that's...
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand. So like, the question is like being bilingual, like have more different exposure than people who speak only one language? Is that?
I think that's one way to get at it, but it's kind of like, I know there's like, there is a different experience. Some of this is generational too, between people like you, clearly you've spent time living in New York, and others who maybe are living their whole life within the Gulf context. So it's a question about that. Like, are they producing art that's different, or how does that kind of translate?
Okay, so I personally like lived and grew up in Kuwait. I went to the States later in my life when I was in my 30s. So I had like a full exposure in Kuwait. I went to public school. I was like most like normal Kuwaiti way of thinking. I feel like the difference that I started my art like after I moved there. So I feel there's a way of, how can I say it? There, I was more able to, I had more knowledge of how to express and guidance, and there is institutions, and there is galleries, and there is space. So I had the privilege of being there and learn faster than being within country. Like, I mean, in Kuwait, artists, I mean, we don't have a lot of galleries. We don't have, I mean, there's commercial galleries, like fine art galleries, there's two. So the art scenes here in Kuwait is very challenging for us, like to go like every weekend and see something new. In a way, I'm trying to think about the questions. I feel like if you have your voice, then you just make it. And I feel like social media is an amazing platform for anyone to start, even if you don't know how to go or what to talk to. So I think it's just a matter of being vulnerable and taking the risk of showing what you're doing. That's all what you need to do.
Let me ask, somebody here has a comment, a critique, I guess, really for the panel and the organization. But it's interesting, I think, to take that up and to engage with it. They thank us, both organizers and artists. They suggest that the kind of panel would have been even more enriched if we had focused on specific discourses within the art scene rather than a general discussion, and to really take up discussions that are happening between artists within the region, kind of a specific theme or topic. So I thought maybe that's an opportunity to do that. Do you kind of, as artists, and Manar, I welcome you too, are there specific themes that you see that are really coming a lot onto the stage at this particular moment that's engaging a lot of different artists that you see emerging that you want to engage with? Let me start with you, Hessa.
I don't know if I got your question correctly, but I feel like a lot of the topics that I feel like I resonate towards is about being a feminist in the Gulf region and talking about things to do with shame culture and talks about women. I feel like those, I don't know if it's because that's my area that I feel drawn, and I feel like there is this movement happening, or is it the actual movement that is happening in the art world? But that's definitely a theme that I feel like I do look at different artists and I do feel like I really relate to them. And I do feel like there is this movement happening, talking about being a female, talking about being a woman, talking about shame culture, limitations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mahmood, how about you?
Actually, do you mind repeating that question, please? Because I got lost for a second.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. I think the idea is they wanted to engage with discussions that are happening between artists. So this is really about, when you're talking to other artists or when you're looking, I mean, all of you are engaged in the art scene, and Manar, it's probably a good question for you too.
Definitely.
Are there particular themes that you see in this sort of Gulf context that are ones that artists are dealing with? Do you see, or it could be a different medium, or it could be other trends, I guess.
Well, I think there's definitely a trend within the artists that are living in the Gulf is to discuss social issues, and also, and I'm saying this from a personal experience myself and talking to some of my colleagues who are in Oman and outside of Oman as well. I think social issues is a big topic that everybody loves to speak up about. I don't want to pinpoint any specific issue, but I think besides that, as Maha and Hessa dive into womanhood, that's also a big matter that everybody loves to touch on as well. And I think it's important as well to do so, because we need this just like we discussed, change is very important, and art is one of those methods in order to initiate change. But I could be wrong. Often at times, a lot of artists, especially photographers, who I very much closely know in Oman, don't usually like to discuss those things, considering that those topics are viewed as taboo to speak about so publicly. But I'm sure that there are other mediums that artists love to discuss as well within their artwork, but particularly social issues as a big point there.
From our side, the Khaleeji Art Museum, of course, there are different themes that are relevant, which are identity is always a huge theme, what it means to be a Khaleeji right now. In 2020, when we first embarked, it was, Ramadan at the time of Corona and Khaleejis in the time of Corona, and how they, how they explored or expressed their art during these critical times. So it was a nice way for us to document that. Another theme that we explored, which is huge right now, is we had a virtual exhibition called Enough is Enough, and 12 GCC artists came together, and they through their different art creations, we raised awareness about the diverse shapes and forms of sexual harassments and assault, and the devastating damage that it causes people. And it was a universal topic at that time, so it was nice to have our GCC artists express and raise awareness about such issues.
Maha, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I mean, I feel like I would be talking in the same topics that everybody's talking about. I think I'm just talking about it with Mahmood, like a lot of people, they don't want to touch these topics because there will be a lot of attack on the person, and some artists, they're not ready for that. I choose my topics about the things that really bother me and that doesn't let me sleep at night. Like for example, like honor killing. Everybody don't want to talk about it. And when you start the conversation, you get attacks because some of the topics about women is very political. And once you touch these areas, then you can be hurt. So I feel having spaces like this where us as an artist can discuss and people can listen, that could start like raise awareness and make people question the way how they see life and the way how they see their own privileges, because that doesn't happen to your family, doesn't mean that doesn't happen to your neighbor. And if you are privileged with family that give you a lot of freedom, then you need to speak up for the neighbor who is like locking their kids or not giving them the full freedom of living.
Well, let's talk, you mentioned this importance of having particular spaces. We have a question from Nazar Halal, who's a PhD candidate at the Gulf Studies Center at Qatar University. And he asked about as we kind of said in our introduction, the creative arts is really a major focus of the diversification that Gulf states are pursuing from the top, really. And that symbolizes in a way, question just jumped. Their global ambitions in a way. And we see this through, the mega museums, really large museums that GCC nationals are working to invoke. So can you talk a little bit to the challenges or maybe opportunities of cultural and art production within this sort of context of, this introduction of these big mega museums? And he also asked the question, is cultural and art production sustainable in this context?
Can you just again rephrase the question? I'm not sure if I got it correctly.
Yeah, well, the question is a little thing, but I think the main question is about this context of really large museums. We've seen like the Louvre, Yemen, in Abu Dhabi, some of these really are larger global art museums that are engaging. And it's just a question about how does that shape your space? You were talking about finding space to engage. Is that something that you think gives opportunity for Gulf artists, or is that something that's kind of a challenge when everything's kind of driven? There's really big state-based projects right now.
Yeah, I feel like it's great that we finally in the Gulf have these kind of big institutions. But to be honest with you, personally, I'm still struggling of understanding the way how we can communicate with them as institutions. I mean, it's not only here, there is kind of procedures and dynamics where who talk to what, where I feel like galleries are more approachable, but I enjoy going to museums, and museums give different kind of experience. And I think it's maybe a matter of time because everything happening just in the last couple of years. These institutions provide also an education to society by providing workshops and by inviting the everyday people to go there. So I think it's important to have these institutions in our region.
Mm-hmm. I guess we have a question from Asma Suleiman that's for Mahmood. You said that, Mahmood, you mentioned something about social media platforms and how people are using that. And she says that sometimes people need a push where they have the courage to post their work for the first time and taking that first step in the world. and wondering if like galleries and museums can also be one way to kind of push you and force you to interact with people and share your work with different perspectives. So I guess we've kind of gone over that question somewhat, but it's about, again, that kind of the way that you respond to social media and other art. So maybe we'll leave that one. Unless do you have anything more to add? I think you kind of already addressed it. But.
Yeah, I believe I did. But I mean, just to add on it very quickly, you just need to have self-courage and the confidence to post that first work and just react to it. You don't have to necessarily worry about it too much. If you're confident about the work and you genuinely want to share it, just put it out there to the world, and whatever happens later happens. You know, you can't really control people's responses anyway. So just put it out there, and the rest will be history.
I will add one more thing. I feel like it's just very important for artists or to be artists to have people similar to them in their friends zones. Like you need someone who understands you, because it's like if you go to your friend who's not an artist, engineer or whatever, will not understand what you're talking about or maybe give you the wrong advice. So it's always and very important to have a community of creative people around you to create the support and the help when things doesn't work out in the way how you think or you want.
We have a question, we're running out of time, but from Isra Balushi. And I like this question. You could take it a lot of different ways, but it's really getting to artists' process and this experience. You wanted just for each of you to share your own personal experience about how you've kind of used your methods or used techniques to kind of work from this conceptualization to visualizing. She says specifically in a museum or gallery, but I think we could do it more specifically. And Hessa, I was actually struck by this and looking at your absolutely gorgeous, beautiful textiles and just the emotion that you get from them, from the color and almost like a speed that I felt with some of them. And I know that you've been, at a place where you're learning a lot of techniques. So I was wondering how kind of working through techniques, how it allows you to express yourself in different ways.
Like I said, it's often challenging, but sitting with yourself and having that time alone with yourself and being in that space where you're extremely vulnerable with yourself really does bring, if you allow yourself to intuitively make and to intuitively create, that's where the power and the magic is, I feel. I think because I was in a space where I was really immersed in my work for the past 2 years, really exploring myself and exploring my methods and my techniques. Honestly, one thing leads to another. Like I'm a very, like I said before, a very intuitive maker. And I am working, I am thinking about these topics and these conversations that I want to have. And I feel like thinking about these things and making very intuitively really does lead me to the end space and the end process. So the way I work usually does come from that intuitive space and intuitive making. And looking at things and visualizing them. I feel like that's the best way I can put it. I wish I had like more textbook answers for that, but being a creative is extremely magical and extremely being in tune with yourself. And
that helps you to kind of guide you to the medium that you should use.
Yeah. So if like I do get triggered by a certain topic, I sit with myself, it's like, okay, why is this topic triggering me? It will lead to things like journaling my thoughts. It will lead to, I don't know, researching about certain topics that I feel like I want to learn more and really understand more, because then I make peace with it myself. And being in that process, looking at materials and just making with my hands really does lead me to that final outcome. I really don't think about it so much. There's a lot of emotion and a lot of energy and a lot of fire and a lot of power that comes into my work. And it's all intuitive.
Mm-hmm. Mahmood, how about you with, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Because like, I think the, also.
Hessa, you broke up.
Yeah, we lost Hessa for a second. Yeah. Okay, maybe we can come back to her.
Was I lagging?
Yeah, you kind of froze for a second. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I was saying, thinking about techniques and letting yourself completely be immersed in your work and in your practice. So I did this technique of like, so learning about your handwriting, I did this technique of knotting and constantly knotting. And this knotting helped me create open spaces and closed spaces in a tapestry. Okay. That really was my internal battle of revealing myself and concealing myself in a space that I didn't feel very safe in. So just when you're an artist and you experiment with so many different things, you tend to find your handwriting. Mm-hmm. And the way you find that is by completely being curious about that certain handwriting, and you want to explore the so many different ways that you can really impact that handwriting and how much you want to create more in that certain technique and that certain process. So I'm a very process intuitive driven maker and creator. And I feel like when you find that spark and you find that magic, that's when it really flourishes.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Mahmood, how about for you? Photography obviously is a big medium for you.
Well, it's interesting this question comes. Yeah, sorry. Well, it's interesting this question comes from Isra, because she's actually one of my biggest support systems when it comes into developing my artwork. I just want to build on what both Maha and Hessa said. I think having a support system is extremely important, and having that circle of close friends who are like-minded and also dive into art as well is important, because it helps you open up new perspectives. And during that process, I've always found it's amazing how certain topics that trigger you actually end up helping you create the best artwork. So I like to have a bit of really both. Often at times, as soon as I find a topic that triggers me, I always turn back into my creative circle and do a lot of research and have a lot of conversations with colleagues of mine in the art scene and try to understand what they think about the topic. And from that point onwards, it's just like a ball dropping down from the hill. It's a lot of research, it's a lot of asking various questions and experimenting with various mediums as well. And I think it gets to a point where it just organically becomes just writings on a book, and it magically turns into a visualization, a photo, a video, or even an installation. And I found that that particular method helped me a lot, having that support system, just like Maha said. And yeah, I'm very grateful to have a lot of the creatives in my circle as well, as a support system as well. And also having access to Sikka magazine and how it connects various artists as well. And I think that's the role that galleries and museums also play, and curators as well, in connecting with various artists as well.
Yeah. Maha, I'll just ask you the same question about technique, and especially I was really struck by that really amazing piece that you displayed here of the kind of the dinner setting, once people have left it, and that kind of absence and the things that remain. And obviously there were a lot of different techniques, including the art on the wall, and when you're creating that installation. So have you sort of come to those different techniques, whether it be, through the embroidery or the...
Yeah, so basically the process is similar to what Hessa and Mohammed said. It's like something triggering. I start to journal a lot. I research, I do conversation. And then I start to think about how do I want to tackle this? I start with photography mostly. And then sometimes the photography I feel like it's not enough. And then I go with the embroidery. So it's how to deliver the message. Basically, whatever something I'm trying to talk about, which medium will fit. And I'm kind of like mixed media, jumping into new medium whenever I feel like this is not talking to me, so I go to the other one. So it's just being very connected to myself, trying to create some sort of rituals and some sort of like free time without a phone, without anything, close the door and just like sit and work. And I learned that time is the most important thing. It's not to show the work very early. And if I'm showing the work, I show it to the right people, not to anyone, because any critique will affect the way how I will proceed with that.
Excellent. Well, wow, I think we've run out of time. I urge you all, if you have a chance to look through the Q&A real quick. Some people have been directing messages to you. They're interested in getting in touch with you, which is great. If you have a chance to just scroll and look at those. And I want to thank you for this audience engagement. And I apologize if we didn't get to your questions. But mostly, I just want to thank Hessa, Mahmood, and Maha for sharing your art and your process and your ideas. It's been just amazing to share this platform with you and to learn of your work and to give us this medium to go and dive in deeper. And I just especially want to thank Manar and also Sharifa and the Khaleeji Art Museum. It was great that we ended this conversation talking about the need for support networks. And you know, it's amazing that through Sukkah Magazine and the Khaleeji Art Museum, you've done that. And I'm just delighted that we found this partnership and this way to bring this to hopefully a broader audience. So Manar, to you and to Sharif, I just wanted to thank you, and I'll hand it to you then for the last word.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you, dear artists. There's one thing we know for certain at the Khaleeji Art Museum. It's that the artists and the art scene in the region continues to evolve. You know, it continues to be redefined every year. More and more of our artists are recognized globally for their valuable works, and social media and museums like ours it helps us in connecting. And also institutions like yours, the Arab Gulf State Institute in Washington, provides avenues to bridge cultures and introduce our region's artists to international audiences. So thank you so much. We really appreciate this partnership. We invite you all to personally follow Hessa, Maha, and Mahmood on social media. Keep up with their great work. If you happen to be in Kuwait anytime soon, you have a month, you can go and check out Maha's exhibition. And in the meantime, you can check the work on their social media platforms and also on their websites. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.